Welcome, and thank you for joining another of GG&A's webinar series. We are so thrilled to be able to provide this opportunity to bring us together during these challenging times. My name is Pete Lasher. I'm the leader of GG&A's higher education practice, and I am pleased to be joined today by Colleen Coppla, Vice President of Development at Montclair State University. Before joining MSU, Colleen held leadership positions at Florida Atlantic and Fairleigh Dickinson universities, and she is one of the more thoughtful voices in our profession, and we are absolutely thrilled that she is here with us. Colleen, thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. Welcome, everyone.
You've held leadership positions at a number of universities, as I mentioned. Could you describe your career arc and share what lessons you've learned along the way?
Sure. Well, like everyone else in development, I didn't plan on going into development. That was not my career path of choice necessarily, but I graduated with an English degree. I thought I wanted to be in publishing. I did work in publishing for a short time, and then I thought I wanted to go back to become a teacher and get my graduate degree. So I started working at a university and basically started as an assistant in the president's office, then ended up quickly finding out through student teaching that I wasn't meant to be a teacher, ended up working in study abroad programs. And then there was a campaign that happened for one of the study abroad programs that I was actually the director of, and I was going to lots of events and meeting alumni. And long story short, the vice president of development called me one day and said, "Hey, why aren't you working for me? You know everyone and you're at all these events and you seem to enjoy people." And I said, "What is development?" And that's how it began. Quickly learned what development was. And I started out in the stewardship area and then into major gifts. And I did, I grew for a long time at Fairleigh Dickinson in my career, and then ended up becoming ultimately associate VP there, and then assistant VP at Florida Atlantic, a much larger state institution, and then landed at Montclair State after that. So lots of things that happened along the way, and interactions and learning and professional development, but kind of landed in it just in terms of being in higher ed and having, I think, a personality of being outgoing and being a natural networker.
That networking, well, you either have it or you don't, and I think I just picture that vice president sort of eyeing you from across the room and saying, "This woman has what it takes. We need to bring her into the profession." But Colleen, the unfortunate truth is that in this profession where 70% of the fundraisers are women, only 20% currently serve as vice presidents. I wonder if you would share your perspective on this fact, and is there advice that you would offer to women listening who aspire to become vice presidents?
Sure. Well, I will be honest and say that I didn't know that stat, Pete, until you actually shared it with me, and I was actually shocked by it. I thought that the number would be higher, frankly. I think for me, I've been lucky that I've always had great mentors along the way, that I always seeked out great mentors along the way as well. I would sort of look to, and men and women, but oftentimes other women, to see kind of what they were doing, how they were managing things, if they were mothers, how that worked, what they did to kind of make their situations work, where they were flexible, or what kinds of things they did to get to the point that they were at in their career. So I was lucky to have a lot of mentors along the way that taught me, this is how you do this. And I think, I always tried to do my best, and I always tried to pay attention and listen and learn those lessons as I went. And then ultimately, as I grew into a leadership role, I was myself as a mother, and I will say that as a female, that has probably been the hardest balance, getting into the VP role, that I'm also a mother. And so I have that other responsibility in my life that I've had to figure out, okay, can I do both? And how does that look? And and it is a challenge. It's been a challenge for me along the way. There have been times that I've made decisions to not put my career first. So while I grew, it wasn't always at the time that maybe I wanted to, because I had other priorities, and I would decide for myself, well, this is not the time for a move, or, this is what works for me right now. So I had to make tough decisions. And I think, my advice to other women would be, you have to decide what your goals are. I think, first of all, anyone's capable of this work. I think all women can do this if they choose to. And I think you do have to seek out those professional development opportunities, those mentors along the way. And I would also just add that I think being transparent and authentic and honest about your situation. I've always, as I've interviewed, as I've had leadership positions and grown along the way, been very direct and said things like, I have 2 young children, or I have 3 young children, and I'm going to need flexibility, but I will, can you work with me, and can we figure this out? And I've been lucky that I've always had support to do that, but I've also proven myself. I've made sure that I paid attention to goals, and I met those goals and objectives and stayed focused on the priorities. So I think looking for those mentors and being authentic and transparent about what your situation is, what your needs are, and looking for those professional development opportunities along the way. Those are 3 things that I would do. And then as a female leader, I do try to make it a priority to support women who are looking for professional development opportunities, who need mentoring. I've been a mentor to others. I try to be as supportive on that front as I can, and I'm open to conversations. And in fact, a few different female leadership groups that we're starting to form here at the university I've just joined. So I try to be a piece of the puzzle there, and a voice and a resource for other women as well.
And this idea of kind of being true to yourself and being authentic is, I mean, that is really, that's what stood out to me in your comments, because the reality is what the reality is, and if you stay true to yourself, good things will happen. Let's turn to our attention to Montclair State. Okay, so can you describe the state of play in the advancement program when you arrived at MSU?
Sure. So I arrived about 3 years ago. Montclair State was about to go public with their SOAR campaign, $75 million campaign. It was baptism by fire. I arrived and they were ready to launch that week publicly. So it was very quickly getting to know the players and the people and the donors and the alumni and my team and our volunteer leaders. This is such a great place. Montclair State University has an awesome mission. It's a compelling mission. So I knew right away that I was coming to a place that was super valuable, that I believed in the mission. I was passionate about the mission. We have very strong volunteer leadership. We have awesome donors. We have a great, strong, solid team. But I think we just needed to kind of turn up the volume on what we were doing and share more across the university, but also externally. What are the great things happening at Montclair State? Why are we having this campaign? What are the priorities? What is it we're trying to accomplish? And really just do more of that communication, getting people excited, getting people enthusiastic, sharing the good news, sharing the stories of the impact of the gifts that were coming into the university. So I think really turning up the volume on what we were doing. We had a great team. We had donors who were committed to us. We had awesome volunteer leaders. We had a president that was leading the way, that is well respected. So all of the right pieces were there, but it was just sort of taking that and turning up the volume on it a bit.
So expand on that a little bit, Colleen. So, I mean, turning up the volume, we might hear that as a communication strategy, right? But what other things did you have to do to really help to deliver the message to your internal and external stakeholders?
Absolutely. Well, I think we did a lot on the organizing on the internal front. So making sure that deans and the provost and the president were out there sharing some of this message, getting out to the community, meeting and spending more time with our donors, sharing more about what the priorities were, what the needs were, but really also getting the students engaged and involved, and making sure that our donors and our alumni were hearing the voice of the students so they could understand both what the needs are, but what we're trying to accomplish here, and what the impact of this campaign was going to be and how it was really changing lives. We have a lot of first generation college students. We're a minority majority institution. We're a Hispanic serving institution. So we have a population of students that if Montclair State University didn't exist, they may not be going to college. They may not have this opportunity. So that is a story that has to be told. And you sometimes need to hear that, right, directly from the students, right? You want to have them out there front and center, making sure that our donors and our alumni are hearing directly from them. This is what this is doing for my life individually as a person. So, definitely it was putting out more communication for sure. It was the electronic communication. It was putting out more physical information. It was getting out there beyond New Jersey and going regional and doing some things in Florida and LA and other places across the country where we have cohorts of alumni. So it was a communication strategy, but it was also kind of aligning all the internal voices to say, hey, this isn't just the work of the development operation. We're all in this campaign together. It is the entire university that needs to be sharing this information. We're all a piece of the puzzle, and putting that out there.
So Colleen, we know from our work with you all that in our conversations with the deans, just how much work you've put into engaging them. So can you just talk a little bit about your outreach to our academic partners in particular? I think the student piece, I think a lot of us appreciate just how potent and impactful their stories are. But talk a little bit about the deans and how you look to engage them.
Absolutely. I mean, I've always done that work. I think I've always felt it was important to make sure that you're talking directly with the deans, with the leaders of each of the colleges, to really understand what is it that they're trying to accomplish individually, but also collectively, big picture wise, at the university. So where there are big issues, how are 2 or 3 colleges working together to try to tackle those issues, if it's healthcare oriented, or if it's political, or if it's something related to a bigger issue that requires more than one discipline. So I found when I arrived at Montclair State that one of the challenges is we've grown so much over time that there's lots going on campus, but everyone doesn't always know what everyone else is doing. And so I sort of use that as an opportunity to go around, really spend more time with the deans, and we have directors of development that we're building those relationships as well. But then also, saying to the deans, hey, have you talked to this dean? Because they're also thinking about big data, or they're also thinking about this healthcare issue, and, using it as an opportunity to connect, be a connector, be a networker, our same development skills across campus, and then really getting those folks together to say, hey, what you're saying, there's funding out there for this. So if we all kind of talk and figure this out, we might be able to approach some new opportunities together because we've got a bigger idea. And so I think it really was hard work. It was boots on the ground. It was just getting out there, making sure that I was listening, spending time with them, going to the meetings, having them come into our meetings, making sure that they're introduced to our team and they see us as a resource and they know that we're here to be helpful, not that, we're this sideline entity, but that we want to be in it. We want to be really in it, and we want to be in it with you all the time. And it's never too early to start a conversation with us. We'd like to be partners and help you figure this out along the way. And I think once, you build that respect and trust with your campus partners, then magic happens.
Yeah.
And it becomes really fun.
Well, and I think we're seeing that, it's as we engage deans, they do see us more than just this resource over here on the side. And particularly, as you pointed out, if we see things from our unique vantage point of being able to see across the campus and to be able to make connections that they may not see themselves because they do live in silos, let's face it. And then we can become much more in the way of strategic partners, which is the space that we should be playing in as advancement professionals anyways, not just having them look to us to drive resources to them. So I think your points are so well taken. How have you approached building a high performance advancement program?
So I think my first approach was getting to know the team and understanding what our goals were and making sure that we're all aligned with what are our priorities, what are our goals. So I would say me, never alone. It's always been a team effort, and really for the first year, it was learning and understanding what are each of the units within my larger department, how are they operating, how are they working with one another. So I think probably one of the biggest pieces of the puzzle in trying to be the more high performing operation is making sure that even within your own department, each of the units are talking to one another. So again, it comes back to, not to harp on communications, but sometimes it's difficult. You're busy, you've got your day-to-day tasks, and you're over here, stewardship is doing their endowment reports for scholarships, and over here, major gift officers are working on closing gifts, and over here, alumni engagement is working on putting out programs to engage our alumni. And sometimes you're so busy in your own world that you're forgetting to say, like, oh, maybe I should maybe I should connect with the major gift officers as I'm putting together this mentoring program, because they may have some folks that. So I've always felt like when I got here that my role was being that sort of global thinker and saying, okay, I know a little bit about everything that's going on. Let's figure out how we can all connect to be more high performing so that we can really reach those larger goals that we have and make sure we're all on the same page about those goals. So it's been a lot of teamwork, a lot of team building, a lot of understanding what we want to accomplish, and then trying to approach everything from that, as opposed to, we've always done everything this way, so we continue to do that and we add it in as we go. I always find that sometimes it's hard, but you do have to sort of stop a little to take a step forward. So sometimes it's like, let's just take a minute to not, worry if we're not doing X, Y, and Z, and think about what is it that we're trying to do together, and then let that drive where we're headed from here. And being more data driven, and this in our work together, Pete, with GG&A, we know that data is important. We know that donors want data. We know that volunteer leaders want data. We always get data questions, how many students are getting financial aid? How much money do you really need in scholarships to affect this population? So, we've become much more data driven. I think that is key to being a higher performing development operation, because it makes us better prioritize our work, and it makes us work smarter, because we're working with facts as opposed to we think this or we think that. It's not data alone. There's always the qualitative side of things, but having good data, I think, and knowing how to use it and where to use it and when to use it is important to being a high performing development operation.
Oh, how much we agree with that. I think it's interesting because as you work with your team to set objectives and say, here, this is where we're going, using data to help you convince them that this needs to be the approach that we take, and then to be able to set those expectations and be able to hold people accountable and use the data to measure progress, not just for your team, but also you have other stakeholders, your foundation board, your
Right.
academic partners, and being able to have that kind of empirical approach is important. But let's talk about it. So beyond the dollars we raise, what are the other measures of success that you and your team measure against?
Well, I think we look closely at how are we received to our donors, and how are we received by our campus partners. So I think that whole notion of working as an entire organization, that development is a respected, trusted partner, that is one absolute metric we want to measure ourselves on. We want to make sure that we're building those close relationships internally as well as externally, and that we're becoming, an important part of the revenue conversation at the university, big picture, so that when there are discussions around, we have this goal or objective or a vision to do something, development is in the room early, and we're a respected and trusted partner in those conversations. And then certainly, I think, what are our donors thinking about us? I think we want to look at, are people engaging with us in meaningful ways? Are they feeling like they had a good experience? Are they happy with the way that they're engaging with us? Are we delivering on our promise to one another in terms of we have a joint interest in something and they're getting value out of being involved and engaged with us? And I think, just again, being that bigger picture partner and making sure that the university in general and the president sees us as a piece of the puzzle, in terms of we're a partner to all the other revenue streams at the university. So it isn't just about tuition, and it isn't just about research dollars, public research dollars, that we can be a meaningful piece of that puzzle going forward, and probably increasingly so in higher ed.
So let me come back to ROI, because I know this is an important part of the conversation, but you said something I just can't let it get by, which is, how do we measure the satisfaction of our donors? And we do a lot of surveying of our donors, and we ask two questions that I think are really interesting. One is, has the institution demonstrated gratitude for your giving? And the other is, has the institution demonstrated the impact of your giving? And across all of the institutions who have participated in these surveys, inevitably on the gratitude question, they score in the 70% range. On impact, it's in the 20s and 30s. And so it becomes really important that it's not just advancement, understanding how the donors look at the world, but how do our other partners, particularly those who are spending the money, because in other studies we've seen, 45% of major gift donors don't understand the impact that their gifts have had. So how do we ensure that we're using these kinds of measures to so it's not just advancement measures, we're in this all together. So thank you for raising that. But so ROI, talk about that. You mentioned that private support is one of the important revenue drivers in a financial model. But how do you talk about ROI? You've got a foundation board that you need to have these conversations with. How do you have those discussions?
We've talked a lot about it the last couple of years here at Montclair State. So we have spent a lot of time convincing our board why we need certain resources to be able to show them better ROI. And I think, again, we go back to data. We look at where we have opportunities, where we can provide resources to meet the needs of those opportunities, and then what the return is going to be. So for instance, a perfect example is when I arrived, we didn't have a leadership giving officer. We had talked about how we had this sort of sweet spot of donors in a certain level that we weren't really touching in a meaningful way. You know, we were doing a mail program and a call program, but we weren't getting any personal interaction with those folks, or as much as we wanted to anyway. And so we looked at the numbers and we said, we've got thousands of people here that are already giving, and our data is telling us, our research is telling us they can be giving more. Maybe not quite at the major gift level yet, but we should be growing this pipeline, and we should be showing them more individual attention. And basically sat down and said, we need to hire somebody, at least one, let's test this out. So we decided to show them, okay, this will be the ROI. This is what we're investing in hiring the person. This is the potential opportunity. Here's the potential ROI. You know, we're doing that over and over again now as we ask for more resources, and we're seeing that we have more success because we're not just throwing things at a wall and seeing if they stick. We're saying we really see something here. We've got the data to back it up, and we want to test it out. We're also not jumping straight into the pool head first. We're saying we can phase things, and we can also talk about where the priorities are. But we do use a lot of data to show, this is, and we measure that out, and and we pivot and adjust along the way. If we're finding that it isn't the way we thought it would look, we're making sure we're communicating that, or we're making a change based on what we learn as we go. But again, it really does come back to the data part of the puzzle and making sure that we're making a strong case, and the case is based on real information, not just hunches or guesses, or, sometimes it's qualitative and quantitative. I still always believe that our work is an art and a science, but you've got to have a plan, and you need to be able to show that if you're making an investment, that there will be a return, and how long that it'll take to get to that return number, and then measure as you go and share the good news as you go. And I found that successful with the board and with the president, being able to make those cases and getting the resources where we've shown that we can get a real good return on those.
Yeah. And you've made such great progress in driving down your cost per dollar raised, and it's always difficult until you do. It's always difficult to sort of say, well, invest more in us until we have achieved an efficient cost return. But I think what's so interesting what you said is that you can still go in and say, listen, we can make strategic investments here, and here are some places where we can definitely show that return on investment. So the example you shared, I think is a perfect I think it's a perfect example of that. Let me shift a little bit. So well, the first question I was going to ask you is, I know you have a new president there, and who you're just now I mean, how many meetings have you had with him since
I've had a 10-minute meeting. So very new.
So I want to ask you a little bit about how you're thinking about onboarding a new president, but you've also had a strong partnership with the outgoing president. So just talk a little bit about when you think of a productive relationship with your institutional leadership. What goes into that? What makes it successful?
Right. Well, I would say this. I think you use the same skills that you use as a fundraiser with your president in building that relationship. So you need to be a good listener. You need to make sure that you're understanding what their goals are, what their objectives are, and how you can be helpful to that front. You're building that trust, that partnership, that relationship to show that you're a piece of the solution puzzle, that you're going to be someone that can really align with those goals and help them drive forward on that front. So in my experience with Dr. Cole, who has been president of Montclair State for 23 years, who retires August 1st, and then our new president, Dr. Coppla, will arrive August 2nd. With Dr. Cole, she had a long history of relationships with donors when I arrived. She had been here for 20 of those years when I got to Montclair State. So I was learning through her about relationships and, spending a lot of time getting to understand what her role had been and how she had engaged folks and what the relationships looked like, but also trying to understand what her needs were from development and how she saw development in terms of that big picture resource puzzle. I think like anything, donors are different. They have different personalities. They have different interests. They have different styles. I think presidents are different. I've worked with a few other presidents prior to Dr. Cole. Each of them have had their own style in terms of, how they see development and the partnership. And I think the bottom line is we're trained to understand people and to understand, get a sense of what it is they're looking to accomplish and then figure out how do we fit into that puzzle. So I think we always come from a place of wanting to be part of the solution, of wanting to be part of the team that's going to drive that vision and that mission forward. And so in preparing for a new president, you're going to help me with that, right, Pete, in terms of GGNA support. So I'm relying on that from you and from your team to help me put a good plan in place. But I think, spending some time getting to know that person, their personality, their style, but of course, what are their vision? What is Dr. Coppell's vision for the university? He will arrive here. He will know lots of things about us already, but as he gets further into his role, what are the things that he wants to drive forward on? And then how can we help him get there? And how can we successfully introduce him to our donors, to our alumni, and also to the community and to corporations and to community partners? That's a big part of his vision, is community partnerships and the role of public higher education within communities. So I already am thinking about that and what that looks like and where we've got community relationships and partnerships, but making sure that we're a close partner and that we can help him accomplish his goals for the university and his vision for us.
Yeah, I think it's so important. I mean, we always think about the presidential rollouts and the events that we need to have, and they need to have that important call with those top donors right even before they start. But what you're describing is much more of that sort of a strategic partnership where how do we really understand his vision, but then engage our community internally and externally to help shape that into ultimately, hopefully, the kinds of philanthropic objectives that will allow us to advance that vision and advance the mission of the institution too. All right, so last question. So Colleen, when we started these webinars, it was at the beginning of the pandemic. And so we were, the first questions we were asking is, how are you adjusting to your teams leaving the office and working remotely? Well, now here we are, where we've been working remotely and succeeding, but now we're thinking about coming back to the. So we're coming full circle. So what are the things that, as you think about your team, as you think about coming back to, if we can call it normal, what are the things that you're thinking about as you help bring your team along?
Yeah, I think, well, I will say that Montclair State is a little bit of an outlier in that we never really closed. So unlike a lot of institutions, we really did stay somewhat open through the pandemic. So we've had presence on campus, we've had presence in the office. So I think we're fortunate in that it won't feel so, stark, this return to work, that we've had some of that kind of happening along the way. I think I'm very mindful of the fact that this is an adjustment, though, that it's been one heck of a year, and that, we all maybe are slightly traumatized by it and still recovering from it a bit, and that will probably continue forward for a bit. So I think making the return to work, feel, first of all, being flexible with folks and knowing that, I want them to be excited about the return, but also feel safe and know that we want them to come to take care of their mental health and make sure that they're in the right frame of mind and, have what they need to take care of their families. I always say, first and foremost, your family, your health, that has to come first. I believe that solidly. And so, I lead in that direction. But I think we want to make it fun. So we're trying to get excited. I mean, we have a lot to be excited about at Montclair State. We have a new president coming. We're thrilled. He's an innovator. He's creative. He's got a lot of energy. So we're all energized by that as well. And I think, making the return fun, we're kind of calling it MSU camp, summer camp right now. So in our return, we're doing some fun lunches and some, dress down days and kind of doing some fun camp oriented activities to make it a fun return to work. We're kind of a silly group. We like to have fun. We're a close-knit team. I think we got a lot closer even through the pandemic. We came out of this year very strong. We're having our most successful fundraising year this year, in spite of everything that's gone on and all the challenges. So I'm really proud of this team and what we've done and what we've accomplished. And, I'm hoping everyone will take a vacation before they get
Thank
back,
you.
because we all need that. And I think that we just, we want to get back to business as usual on some level. We will continue to do some hybrid things because we've realized that it complements some of our work. So we don't want to let go of the things that are actually working. But, I think we're people in development, right? This has been somewhat of a nightmare for us, being closed in our houses and not having visits and not having trips and not being with one another and having that kind of in-person synergy. So naturally, I feel that we're all excited. We've had a few events recently on campus, so we've started that return, and you can just feel the energy. And I think making it fun and also being thoughtful to the fact that yes, it's a transition, and so giving people some space and time to get through that piece is important too. But I think we've gotten closer through the pandemic as a team because we had to.
Yeah.
We were in it. The rest of the university didn't quite understand, how we do what we do and how much of a pivot this was and a switch for us it was. But I think we got stronger because we had to,
Well,
coming through it together.
And it's such an exciting time. Our time is up though. So Colleen, thank you so much. This has been super valuable. And thanks to
Thank you,
everyone. And thanks to everyone for joining us today. We're all learning together and during this remarkable time. We don't have time to answer the questions. We will post your questions, and Colleen, I hope that we can
Absolutely happy
your
to.
answers. But in the meantime, please contact us if you have any questions whatsoever. We'd love to talk with you. And Colleen, have fun at the Jersey Shore.
I will. I am taking my vacation. I'm leading by example, and I will be gone for a week. So thank you so much, Pete. And thank you to everyone for logging in today.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.